Howdy, gang. Don't know how many we'll be having this evening. Hopefully, maybe we'll have a few more because hopefully people are off from work and all that good stuff. If you see some steam rising up in front of me on camera, it is some soup that I fixed. I have been kind of flirting with a cold, or the cold has been flirting with me. So, um, I see Chris is on here. I am planning on having both Candice and Chris on here this evening. Um, and I'll go ahead and add Chris here in just a second after I get done with my spiel here. Um, hey, Ginger. Hey, Blissful. We've got both of you ladies in here tonight. Um, Hopefully, we'll have a few more because if you haven't read the title, would you like comedy with that part two? We're going to be continuing to talk about horror comedies, which me and Chris talked about on the last Apples and Oranges that Chris was on with me. And we talked about several horror comedies that were some of our favorites. So we're continuing that. And I see Candace is also backstage as well. So we're going to have a full house as far as me and my two, well, one lovely co host, one handsome co host. I try not to call the guys lovely co hosts because that's just not right. So I try not to do that. But Candace is a very lovely co-host, and Chris is her very handsome husband, so he's a handsome co-host. And I don't think Candace would mind me saying that. I don't flirt with Chris or anything like that. So me and Chris is like a brother to me, and Candace is like a sister to me. That's the way our relationship is. So um, did want to remind everybody that's in here this evening that I will be having one watch along this weekend, and that will be on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This will be for Dario Argento's Phenomena. Hopefully, I'll be able to have some people on with me for that. Keep your fingers crossed, folks. And we're soon going to be going into October. And like I said, October is going to be Fulci fall. But not only is it going to be Fulci fall with a lot of Fulci programming, a lot of Fulci watch alongs, but me and Candace are going to be doing a Friday Foolish at some point in October on Universal Monsters. So look forward to all of that coming up. Um, Ginger's probably so. You say, I'm sure she appreciates the compliment because it means she has good taste. Candace does have good taste in men and otherwise. She has good taste. She has good fashion sense and hair sense and all that. And me, I don't have any. So it's just I'm just except I had the good sense to grab Steve when he came around. So that's probably the only sense I do have. So anyway, um, Blissful, you say Ginger is like my sister and mom likes her best. Blissful. I know your mom loves you too. Um, but anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and add my co host here. I hope Chris doesn't think badly of me if I add Candace first. So he's shaking his head no. So
Hey, Dana.
hey, Candace.
How are you?
Um,
You might not can understand me. I don't know if you've explained to them that I'm sick or
well,
not.
I have on other streams and videos, but guys and gals, if you aren't in the know, I'm flirting with a cold, and poor Candace has been dealing with strep. So
Yeah, bad.
her voice may go, and that's another reason we're going to have Chris on here in case she starts coughing really bad or loses her voice. Chris can step in, but we're going to let him talk about some movies too. We're not just going to say, no, you got to shut up while, unless Candace can't talk or something. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and add Chris as well. Hey, Chris.
Hey, can you see me? I'm on my phone, so I'm kind of there. That's a little bit better.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, Noah took the spare laptop with him to his mama's, so I said, well, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to do this on my phone then.
Well,
I
that's
could,
okay.
I could, I could do it on my work computer, but I would get fired. So
No, we don't want Chris getting fired. No, phone's fine. Phone is fine. I don't know that I would get fired if I used my work laptop, but I might get reprimanded in any event if I did that. So I don't think they want me using it for anything other than work, to be honest. Um, so Candace has got her Beetlejuice drink
Yeah,
tumbler, or what would you call it? Do you call it a tumbler, Candace? Or
yeah. It's one of those like 40-ounce Zach
Mhm.
tumblers. I love this thing.
Chris has a matching one.
And I bought one for my son too. He keeps stuff cold, so it's been a
yeah,
lifesaver.
yeah, I'm really glad she bought those because I use mine every day now.
Yeah.
I need to get me one. I haven't yet got me one. I need to,
Nice.
check out that link that
How
Candace.
big it is, Dana? Look.
I know it's
Yeah, yeah, they're huge. Like
it's
and
like
like she said, it you put ice in those babies and they stay cold for hours.
mhm.
Yeah, those are from Walmart. But they have they have Chucky, they have Wednesday, they have I think Nightmare Before Christmas.
I think they have a Pennywise one too.
Do
That
they?
would be cool too.
I think
Well,
so.
well, they're worth it though. 14 something, I think is how much those are, which is really, really cheap. I think.
Well, if it'll keep your drinks cold like that, yeah, I'd be all for it. Um, Ginger says you have beautiful complexion, Candace.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And Ginger also says, I just got over a crazy long cold and constant sneezing last week. I think something is going around. I think
Yeah.
several somethings are going
Oh,
around,
yeah,
actually.
definitely.
Um, Clowns creep you out, Ginger? Well, they creep out other people
They
that
do
I
me too. You ain't the only one. I'm the same way.
Yeah, I used to, I talked about this before. I used to have a shirt that had it had Stephen King on it too, but it had a bunch of characters from his books. And one of the characters was, of course, Pennywise with those sharp nails, going,
Oh yeah.
that freaked people out. They would be like, Dana, please don't wear that shirt again because it's got Pennywise on it and it freaks me out. Um, I still say, in connection with Pennywise, I still say Tim Curry was the best Pennywise. I like Bill Skarsgård. I do. I think he does a good job. But just Tim Curry's Pennywise is the Pennywise for me if I had to pick my favorite.
Yeah.
Um,
Chris is the
For me,
fan.
I mean, I kind of I'm always on the fence when it comes to that, because As far as like the portrayal of the character, I like Tim Curry better.
Mhm.
But as far as like scare factor goes, I thought Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise was a lot creepier and scarier than Tim Curry's.
Yeah, he may have been a little more sadistic than Curry's Pennywise.
He goes
Yeah,
beyond
well, just a
clown
lot of
like.
the stuff, just a lot of the stuff in the two new films with Bill Skarsgård like was a lot more like darker kills and just darker scenes in general. Like I believe it's in chapter 2, the funhouse scene with the little kid. It's like a
I've not seen that one
skateboarder,
yet.
and that's to me that's one of the most like creepiest like scary scenes in both of those movies.
Mhm. Now, Chris, I got to ask you this since you brought that up. Do you think that it would have been different had Tim Curry's version of Pennywise been in a feature film instead of a made for TV miniseries?
It's hard to say. I mean, because even though it was a TV miniseries, it still had feature film quality to it. I mean, you look at it like Tommy Lee Wallace was behind the helm of all that, and and he that's what he kind of made a name for himself, was working on feature films, Halloween 3, Fright Night 2,
Right.
stuff like that. Um,
But
so
as
I
far
mean,
as the restrictions, like the TV
right, right, right.
practices has,
Well, it was what 1990 when the
Mhm.
miniseries came out, and I guess there was just around that time there was a lot of limitations on what they could do, especially where it being a TV miniseries, and even with the new ones with Bill Skarsgård, there's still stuff that they left out of the book, for good reason, though, if you ask me. Because some of that stuff, if you try to adapt it into film, I don't think it would go over very well. Some of the
well,
stuff
and
that
you're probably, one of the things, and I'm not going to go into deep detail about it because if you've read the novel, you know what I'm talking about. There is a scene in the book where Beverly consummates her
Mhm.
relationship with all of the boys in the group. She's the only girl.
That's exactly what I was referring to.
And in this day and age, especially, that would not go over well at all.
Oh,
It would be
no.
all kinds of misunderstood. And I think when Stephen King wrote that, I don't think Stephen King was thinking of it in a sleazy, um, that they were taking advantage, that it was and I'm not going to say the word, but a gang, you know,
Yeah,
um, taking advantage of Beverly because she was the only girl and stuff like that. But if you read the book in the entire context, and I've said this, and I said it before, I'll say it, continue to say it, that that was an innocent thing. Yes, the boys took her virginity many, 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 many times because there were seven of them, and six boys and one girl, and every one of them came to Beverly in private, and essentially they made love to her, and some people like that aspect of it as a they didn't see it as a purely sexual act. They saw it as they all loved each other. And then other people saw it as, ooh, what was Stephen King thinking when he was writing this scene? So there's lots of different interpretations of that particular scene. But no, that would not go over well in a film.
I wasn't really one of those people that thought like ooh or whatever, but I also like didn't really interpret the way you do
Mhm,
either. It was when I read that, because I read the book back in high school,
mhm,
so that's probably early 2000s when I read the book, I had already seen, the TV miniseries and everything, but I wanted to read the book when I got into high school. I wanted to see if there was anything different, and boy, did I find some different stuff in there. Uh, yeah, it didn't really I didn't, like I said, I didn't interpret the way you did. I also didn't look at it like, ooh. I was just more shocked, really, than more than anything, because I was like, what the hell's going on between these kids?
Oh, we lost Candace for a second.
Uh-oh.
Hopefully she'll be able to come back. Um, yeah, I was a little shocked at first when I read that too, Chris. I was like, okay, where is this going? And then I was like, oh, that's where it's going. Okay. And I did kind of wonder about it, but I read it multiple times. Not as many times as I've read some of Stephen King's shorter novels, but uh, and I every time I reread a Stephen King novel, sometimes I will get different interpretations of certain parts of it. So, um, hey, Toilet Bow. I mean, I hope you don't mind me.
Toilet bowl, toilet bowl food review. That's an interesting name.
That is an interesting name. Um, but like I said, I hope we get Candace back. But I guess we better go ahead and start getting into um, these. There's Candace. Let me add her back real quick here.
Sorry, something happened. It was buffering.
Oh,
Oh,
sometimes it kicks me out too, and we've got real good internet. And sometimes,
well, she's on Noah's laptop right now, and he's been having some issues here lately with his computer. So I don't. It could be something to do with that. I don't know.
uh, well, I think
Yeah.
StreamYard's just a pain in the butt. Sometimes it just randomly kicks people out for no apparent reason, or you have to make yourself leave because, like Candace said, it starts buffering or something like that. But
Yeah.
so I'm going to kind of hang out in the shadows a little bit and take a few bites of my soup. But Chris, Candace, did one of y'all want to start talking about one that you may have? Chris, I'm sure you didn't talk about all yours on apples and
Well,
oranges.
no, but I'd like to give Candace an opportunity to, I guess, start it off since she hasn't got a chance to talk about that stuff yet.
Sure.
Well, before I say anything, Chris, is your fan blowing into your microphone?
Why can you hear something like it?
Mhm.
It's that fan's way back here.
Oh, okay. Then it must be something else. Um, I mean, like horror comedies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I mean, you know what my obvious first one would be.
Beetlejuice.
Well, no, that wasn't it.
Oh, I
Oh,
was
But
going to say Beetlejuice also. Wow.
Beetlejuice is a good one. I didn't even think about that. But the Burbs,
The
oh
Burbs.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
yeah, that would be because I mean, Beetlejuice is that, but I don't know. I always think of the Burbs whenever I think of horror comedies, just because I think that it's just the perfect horror comedy. Um, it's got everything that a horror comedy would want. It's got the spook factor, it's got the scary stories, and
It's got a lot.
it's got a lot. I mean, there's
Yeah.
the conspiracy theories are going on in there with everybody, trying to conspire about what's going on. Are these grave robbers? Are they people that go out and bury bodies at night, and there's so much going on in that little bitty
And
neighborhood.
you got Tom Hanks, all the
Yeah,
great lines. He has all the great lines. Corey Feldman has in
yeah,
this
and
one.
Bruce Dern.
Bruce Dern.
Um, I mean, it's filled with so much fun, and and to me, it has one of the greatest soundtracks of any kind of like movie. I don't know, it's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I could sit and listen to it. I'm a big soundtrack person, so I could sit and listen to soundtracks all the time, and I do. I think Noah has inherited that from me because he will play sound like Beetlejuice soundtrack. We'll go down the road and be listening to that or Willy Wonka or something like that. I know people, if they can hear us in the other cars, are like, what are these people doing? watching movies in their car or something. But I mean, look at the cast that's in this film as well. I mean, you got Carrie Fisher, you got Tom Hanks, Corey Feldman, Bruce Dern. I mean, it just the list goes on and who's in it. Dick Miller.
Yeah.
Well, Dick Miller and Robert Picardo are
Yeah,
both
he's in it.
Yeah.
the two garbage men in it.
Garbage Man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are just those are regulars for Joe Dante, like because Joe Dante had Robert Picardo in The Howling. He also had him in Gremlins too.
yeah.
Dick Miller, I think, is in like almost everything that Joe Dante has done.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think for me, like the highlight of that film is just I don't know. It's like the Klopeks make the perfect spooky family. Like, the
Mhm.
spooky, like the shadow in the corner.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, because obviously, just by looking at the house, that the people that live in this is not you know normal people. So whenever all these like neighborhood gossips going on, and you're learning more about what's been kind of whispered around and talked about, and then you start seeing it by like that first time whenever Hans, Courtney Gaines's character, he drives this trash out to the end of his driveway and just beats the hell out of it when he puts it in this trash can,
And it's
you
like
know.
they say, I never seen anybody take their trash to the end of the street and beat the hell out of it
Yeah,
before.
I mean, it's just, and then you got Bruce Stern's character, which I think absolutely just makes the whole film because he he's this army guy, and he's just really hey, put stand up soldiers, let's do this. He's kind of
Mhm.
looking at this as a mission, to find out what's going on with these neighbors and what happened to the neighbors that did live there, and
Mhm.
he cracks me up whenever he's up on that roof, and they're all like at the end, when they're all watching out whenever Tom Hanks' character and Art, they go uh, into the Klopek's house, and he's up there, and he's got his walkie talkie and all his gear on, but he's got these little animal crackers, and he's sitting and he's trying to
Right.
dip them into the milk. I think that's hilarious.
And then you got Corey Feldman doing, I got the pizza dude coming. I just
Yeah,
laugh
oh,
every
I love it. I love it, but I don't know. I think that it is the perfect film because anybody can watch it. I mean, I watched that as a little kid, and it was one of our. You hear me talk about this from time to time. I had a bunch of special films that me and my grandpa used to watch together, and The Burbs was definitely one of them. And because my papa liked horror films, he was a big movie fan, and my dad was exactly the opposite. My dad hated horror films; he was scared of them. So you never caught him. He actually watched some with Chris, which had surprised me because my dad always hated horror because
yeah,
it scared him. I know that's what it was.
he
Uh,
did. He didn't like. He would start some every now and then, and then once he realizes kind of like what I was watching, he would either get up and go to another room or something. But the only horror film I can think of that your dad actually sat and watched the whole thing with me was Train to Busan.
yeah, I can't believe
I
that.
can't
And
believe he watched
No.
that.
that's so bizarre that he actually sit and
Mhm.
watch the whole thing with me.
Now,
It's
when
like,
it
wow.
came to things like The Burbs, now my dad loved The Burbs. That was something
Yeah.
that he absolutely loved. He absolutely loved that film. And so that was a way to me to even, connect with my dad because, hey, this is not exactly horror, but it's in that spooky realm, where you can kind of say that it is. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I absolutely love The Burbs. I think it's just one of the greatest movies ever made. I think it's Joe Dante's best to me, just because I'm partial to it. Um, which I like Joe Dante anyway. I like his work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're kind of having a little mini Burbs reunion coming up at Scarefest. Joe Dante's going to be there. Courtney Gaines is going to be there. You know, unfortunately, several of the people from the cast have passed away. Carrie Fisher and I forget the guy. I think his name's Rick DeConham or something.
Yeah,
The
the
guy that played
funny
Art.
Art. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love his
he's
character.
on with us. Of course, Tom Hanks is not going to be at Scarefest.
That
I
would
don't
be awesome.
I
Every
don't think
time
we'll
would
see
be out
him
the
at any
door if he had.
conventions. Bruce Dern, he used to do some show, but I think he's just gotten where he's old now and he really can't travel a lot and stuff. Corey Feldman does shows, so but I don't know what's going on with him. I know he's doing some conventions next year, but maybe he just wasn't in the cards for him this year. Maybe he's doing some like touring or something with his band right now.
Right. Yeah, that's possible. Um, I hear that noise too, Candace. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like Freddy Krueger might be in the room with Chris, and
It
he's
does a little bit.
bringing his
Turn this
claws
fan off and see if it changes.
It's a weird sound. I don't
It's a
know.
strange sound. I don't know what it is.
Do you still hear it?
I'm not hearing it right now.
Chris is in his new office that's getting transitioned.
Yeah,
It's still,
yeah. So
you see a
yeah,
bunch of
it's kind of a
boxes. That's
mess
what
in
that
here
is.
right now, but doing what I can with it.
It doesn't look bad. It looks like it's in a transitional process, but it doesn't look like it's a mess or
I
anything.
gave up my beautiful room to him, so
Now that's a good wife there that will give up
well,
her beautiful room.
I think he likes it, so that's a good thing.
Candace, I don't know if I would be nice enough to give up one of my rooms to Steve. Instead, I've come into his house essentially and took over everything.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he was
Well, Chris,
saying that we both just have too much stuff. You
yeah,
know,
well, that's an understatement when it's talking about me and Chris and Noah. But Chris works hard for it. So I said, he was surprised. He couldn't believe I said, Chris, do you want to switch rooms? And he's like, what? You're going to give
are
me
you
that room?
are you pulling my leg here, or are you gonna let me have it?
Well, the thing is, he has more collectibles and stuff. That room's bigger. So I said, I don't need that much space. So let's just switch rooms and you can have this one. And then, I could have that one back there and it'll just be easier for us. So,
Yeah.
but I think it's going to be a good switch.
I wish I had a craft room. But unfortunately, Steve would probably say, well, if you didn't have an iguana and you didn't have a snake and all that stuff, you could turn that room into a craft room. But no, you want to have these animals. So, but I'm kind of almost turning this room back here into a craft room. I've got my heat press and stuff like that
Yeah,
back there on
yeah.
a cart and my printer and all that. Um, so, Chris, do you want to talk about one, or do you want me to talk about one of mine first?
You can go ahead.
Well, I'm try-
I'm still trying to think about which one I want to talk about.
I think I'm going to skip around a little bit on my list and not just go straight down the list. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about Slumber Party Massacre 2. Um, and the reason why I consider Slumber Party Massacre 2 a comedy, a horror comedy film
Well,
is
it kind of is.
for one main reason, and that is that the driller killer comes back as a deceased rock star. He basically
Yeah,
inhabits a deceased rock star, and this guy literally has a guitar with a drill that comes out of it and kills people. Uh,
it's very different from the original Slumber Party Massacre. That's for sure.
because I remember when I first watched it, I had already watched Slumber Party Massacre, the first one, which was pretty much a straight ahead slasher type of film. So I didn't know any better. I mean, I knew that this had Crystal Bernard in it, which should have been my first indication that this wasn't going to be a deep, dark horror film. It has Crystal Bernard from Wings is on this thing. Now, she wasn't in Wings then, I don't I'm trying to remember when Wings first started.
Wings came out, I want to say late 80s, early 90s.
Mm.
Uh, but I
And
can't remember exactly when.
yeah, but I loved Wings, and I loved her in Wings, and I loved
Now
all.
1990 it says.
Okay. So this was prior to Wings starting. So we had a little bit younger Crystal Bernard, although I don't think she was young enough to be playing a high schooler, but they did their best with what they had. Crystal Bernard's cute, you know. So she plays Courtney, the younger sister of Valerie in the first film. And we figure out that Valerie has been sent away to the mental hospital because she has not been able to deal with the stuff from the first film. So she got sent off to the mental hospital. And only one of Courtney's school friends knows that Valerie's in the mental hospital. And the rest of her friends think that Valerie is off at college, someplace called Humboldt. I don't know if Humboldt is a real college or not. Probably not. Um, but Courtney is in a band with her friends, and I'm trying. Is the name of the band Wednesday Week that does the songs, Chris, or do you remember? I
I
thought.
cannot remember at all because the last time I watched Slumber Party Massacre 2, it's been probably around like 4 or 5 years. I know the last time I watched it, me and my brother-in-law CJ, we watched it together. Um, but no, I cannot remember what the name of that band was.
And the guy that plays the driller killer rock guy, I think is Atanas Lidich. I'm probably massacring that guy's poor guy's name. But he actually put out an album, I think probably sometime after this movie was made. But he's great in it because before he kills people, he's moving his hips like Elvis, and he's singing and dancing and switching his guitar around all over the place, and spins around and does all kinds of things, and then he kills you, with the drill on the end of his guitar. And I was like, at first I was like, what in the world is going on here? And then I got into it and really begin to enjoy what they did with this film. And I think that they did the best thing that they could have for that series by not having another just all out scary slasher film. Now, there may be people that disagree with me on that, and that's okay, but I just think it's kind of refreshing. You had a very dark first film. It's kind of like the Evil Dead series for me. The first Evil Dead film was very, very dark. The second film had more humor in it. By the time you got to Army of Darkness, it was all out Ray Harryhausen, skeleton soldiers and stuff like that. But it was fun. So I had a lot of fun with Slumber Party Massacre 2 once I realized, oh, hey, this is the direction they're going in. Now, Chris, how do you remember how you felt about it the first time you saw it?
Um, well, to be honest, I've never been really big on Slumber Party Massacre 2,
Mhm.
um, or the third one for that matter. Um, I just, the really one I really like not really connected with. I mean, but just the one I just really liked was the first Slumber Party Massacre because it had more of a serious tone to it, and I think that's what really kind of threw me for a loop with Slumber Party Massacre 2 was like the dancing and stuff of the guy before he kills you and stuff, and just act like Elvis. And I know that typically that would be something that I would like because I would like that goofiness within my horror films. But just seeing how different it was from the original Slumber Party Massacre, it just kind of like it felt like a completely different like franchise, like that this movie should belong in. If it was called anything else other than Slumber Party Massacre 2, I
Mhm.
may appreciate it more. But just because of the huge difference between it and the first film, it just kind of throws me off and kind of puts me on the fence about how I feel about it.
Right. Well, I think that's a very valid answer to that. Now, Candace, have you ever seen Slumber Party Massacre 2? Oh, okay.
No, I don't believe I've ever seen it, unless Chris was watching it and I didn't pay any attention to
Right.
it.
No, I don't. I don't think me and you've ever. Like I said, the last time I ever watched it was with CJ because he wanted to watch all of the films, and we did. And I think he's kind of in the same boat with me.
Yeah,
Where he likes the original really well, um, but as far as the others, he's not really big on them like me.
yeah.
And I like that Chris has a different perspective on it, that CJ has a different perspective on it. Some of you guys and gals in the chat may have a different perspective, but I would love, love, love if Candace ever decided that she wanted to watch it and she got to watch it. I'd love for her to come on here on another Friday Foolish. We don't even have to be talking about horror comedies and just give her thoughts on it. She may hate it, she may like it, she may be about it, but I just would like to know her thoughts.
I know about the Slumber Party Massacre films because I've heard Chris talk about them. I've heard a lot of people talk about them. But I don't think I've even watched the first one. So, I mean, that might be something this Halloween or something that I might um, sit down and give a watch to.
And and slashers are my favorite subgenre of horror. And I guess it's just with when it comes to slashers, I don't really like. Even though I love comedy horror, I love comedy horror so much. But it just when it comes to slashers, though, I just it feels weird to me by putting comedy in them. And I feel like the only slashers that really work with comedy are the Nightmare on Elm Street films, like the Part 3, Part 4, Part 5, and so forth. Um, because it's just that's just plays into that whole character of Freddy Krueger, and it works so well that way because it can be funny, but it's also dark at the same time, is
Right.
how they perceive it on film. But with the more like lesser known franchises that are slashers, like Slumber Party Massacre. I don't want to say it's like lesser known, but it is lesser known than the Nightmare on Elm Street films.
Right.
I feel like the slashers like that should always keep a serious tone. Stuff like My Bloody Valentine or The Prowler, or
What would you say about
even
like Horror High?
Return to Horror High.
Yeah, Return to
Well,
Horror.
that's definitely like in the horror comedy. So like,
Because I thought
I
you
don't
liked
know.
it.
I don't really consider it really a slasher, but it is kind of
Yeah,
at
it
the
is.
same time.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's a little bit different. Like, but like Slaughter High is another one. Like, it kind of has a little bit of goofiness to it, but it has more like serious tones to it more than anything. And I don't know. I guess I'm just different when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah. You like what you like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and I think that goes for everybody. I wanted to read what X-Ray put in here. He said, "Slumber Party Massacre 2 was hilarious, but it always confused me that they used footage from another film series." And then he goes on to say, "Or am I confusing it with Sorority House Massacre?" I think you are confusing it with Sorority House
Yeah.
Massacre, X-Ray, because what happened with that is they showed in the Sorority House Massacre sequel when oh god, what was the guy's name? It just slipped right out of my mind. The the guy that tells them the story about the driller killer, or he talks about the driller killer, which the driller killer really has nothing to do with sorority house massacre, not especially not the first one, but they show scenes from Slumber Party Massacre. And he's talking about Hochstetter, and Hochstetter killing his whole family, and everybody has different names, and they're supposed to be his daughters, and it was girls getting together for a slumber party. So I get what X-Ray's saying about
Yeah,
that.
and I went over to my shelf over here. I was going to pull Sorority House Massacre off the shelf, but because I thought I had it, but apparently I don't.
Oh, okay. X-Ray also brings up the Leprechaun movies. He says they were pretty funny,
Yeah.
especially the first one when he's driving around in a Power Wheels Jeep.
Yeah.
That was a knee slapper. And hey, TJ. TJ says X-Ray Slumber Party Massacre 2 uses footage at the beginning from part 1 to connect the two movies as a kind of recap since it's a direct sequel. Yes,
And
and
I want to ask you, Dana, since X-Ray brought up the Leprechaun movies, I've never really known where to categorize those films. I mean, they're like slashers, but they're also kind of a creature feature in a way because of what he is.
yeah.
I don't really know where do you categorize Leprechaun films, and what subgenre of horror do you guys put those in?
Like a monster flick to me.
Yeah, which goes along with the kind of the creature features thing.
Mhm.
But I do see what Chris is saying. They have slasher elements in
Yeah.
there too, so
Yeah.
that's hard. That's
So
hard.
it's hard because whenever I think of slasher films, I don't think of the Leprechaun films really,
Mhm.
but I could see why people would though.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Leprechaun's one of those that's hard to pin down, or hard for me to pin down to one subgenre or another
Mhm.
in horror.
But they are comedy. There a lot of them are
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
there's a
From
lot
the
of
very first film, and that's not like what we was talking about, like how some of these franchises will start off as more serious, and
yeah.
then like the Evil Dead films, and then they go on, they have more comedy in them. From the very first film of Leprechaun, like it had that ridiculous, nature about him and stuff
Yeah.
in the film.
And I remember the guy's name now that told the story in the sorority house massacre sequels. It was Orville Ketchum. I was trying. He's the neighbor that comes across the street and tells the sorority girls this story about Hochstetter. But
Mhm.
it shows scenes from the original Slumber Party Massacre, and because Roger Corman pretty much produced all of that stuff. So that is why they were able to mix and match all of those different films into one another.
I'm liking all these character names that is from this film. Because whenever you say like Hofstadter, I was saying, what did I know that from? From Willy Wonka. I don't know if y'all remember that part where they're like,
Oh,
where they're going around trying to see where all the tickets are. And I
mhm.
don't know if the guy says Hofstadter or Offstadter, but he says, "Shut up, Hofstadter, and tell me what the ticket is." This guy's laying down and talking to his therapist about this
Oh
drug
yeah, that
test,
part. Okay.
and he says, "Shut up, Hofstadter, and tell me what the ticket is." Sorry, if my voice is breaking. I can't help it. It's
But I think that therapist in Willy Wonka was supposed to be like Sigmund Freud or something. Like that's the
he's
way they was like portraying him as.
yeah, he's wanting to know where the ticket is. So whenever I hear that name, I think he's saying Hofstadter, but you reminded me of that whenever you said that. So
My dear husband's in here. You
hey,
better get back to work, Steve. You're gonna get in trouble. In here waving with the little, I don't know what that is, an alien emoji or what that is, waving at us. Steve says he don't know. He just picks these emojis just random. Um, but I think I've talked about Summer Party Massacre too enough. I'll shift it over to Chris to talk about one of his.
Okay. Well, I thought of one that I would like to have talked about on the last time we did this, but we didn't really. We kind of ran out of time because we went so long on that. But it was one that I had planned to talk about, and Russell actually, I believe it was Russell that brought it up in the chat. And I'm a huge Universal Monsters fan, just like Candice is. Like that's what one of the main things we collect when it comes to our horror collection is Universal Monsters. Um, and also, we're huge fans of Abbott and Costello.
Right.
So, of course, we're going to love it when they brought those two worlds together,
Oh,
uh,
definitely.
and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And if you've never seen the film, don't let the title fool you, because Frankenstein is not or Frankenstein's monster, I should say, is
Right.
not the only Universal monster in the film. Pretty much all the main ones are in it. Dracula's in it, Wolfman is in it.
Mummy.
Uh, is the Mummy? I can't remember.
Is
I
he?
don't. I
Mm,
know. I don't think the Mummy is in. I think it's mainly just the Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, Wolfman, and at the very end of the film, when they escape in the boat, the Invisible Man is on the boat with them, but it's the voice of Vincent Price. Because you just see like the cigarette that he's smoking. But
Well, is there
if the
Abbott and Costello meets the Mummy?
there is an Abbott Costello Meet
That's
the
what I
Mummy.
love. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
love
think that's
that
why
one.
you got those
Yeah,
mixed up. But
I
yeah, they
love
do
that.
that one as well. Um, but in Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein, it's pretty much as much as I love all the Universal Monsters films. It's my favorite Universal Monsters film because they're all together within that with Abbott Costello, and I feel like that film was one of the pioneers of horror comedy.
right.
Um, because with all the other standalone films with Universal Monsters, with the Frankenstein films, which the Dracula, the Wolfman films, all of those, they all had that serious tone to them. There was really no comedy in there except for like maybe like the scenes with the Frankenstein's monster in Bride of Frankenstein when he goes and goes to the blind man's cabin.
Yeah,
Uh, so they kind of like even they make that go even further when they make fun of that in the Mel Brooks movie Young Frankenstein with Gene
yeah,
Wilder. Um, but anyway, what like with Abbott Costello meet Frankenstein, when they bring those monsters into the mix, because like I think they're like working like at like a postal service or something like that,
yeah.
because you know Dracula's coffin is like there, and they're having they're supposed to deliver it, I guess, to this castle, which is Dracula's castle.
Hmm.
Um, so and from the moment like they had that scene with Bela Lugosi as Dracula, and like he starts putting Lou Costello in that like trance. I mean, it's so funny to see, like especially if you had seen the Universal Monster films, like the regular ones, the standalone films before seeing that, and then just seeing how everything is portrayed in Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein. It's so hilarious,
Yeah.
but it works, and I think that's ultimately what everybody wants. Like I don't know what it was like when they were making the film. If they were like, is this really going to work? Is it people going to like this? And everybody I know that's a fan of Universal Monsters loves this film,
Hmm.
and because it definitely works. Just because I think mainly because of that time era, because comedy was just as big as like horror during that time. So to see those two come together, I think it was genius in my opinion. Um, and just like this the back and forth banter, like as you see in the regular like Abbott Costello comedy films and TV shows, it's all there, and like it's like I don't. That's why to me Abbott Costello were like like a genius comedy duo because they could really take any kind of material and make it work with their humor.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, how do you guys feel about that?
Oh, well, I love all the Abbott and Costello stuff,
Yeah.
and like I've said before, uh, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. That's a movie that Steve has on the TV every Halloween, and it's twofold because we love watching it, but also it's a safe movie to have playing in the background when the trick or treaters come
Yeah.
up to the door to get candy. You don't want to be having like a slasher film, two people having sex or
Yeah.
some girl running around with her boobs out or something like that. You just don't want that kind of stuff on the big screen TV whenever kids are coming up to
No.
get their bags of candy or whatever.
Well, if I was a kid and I seen that boobs hanging out or something when I got to the door to get candy, I probably would have enjoyed that.
Chris will get
No. But see, I grew up. My dad was a huge Abbott and Costello fan, and that was something him and Chris, could relate to. So we had all the VHS tapes, and we'd watch the Who's on First, the classics. And I think they had a Colgate era too, like the Martin
Yeah,
Lewis Colgate era, and we'd watch it all the time. But the one that I grew up watching the most was Abbott Costello Meets the Mummy, and it was my grandpa liked that one too, and that's why I was getting confused early because I've watched it more than the other one. But what me and Chris really like the Meet the Frank. I think Chris's favorite is Meet Frankenstein.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but see, I like the Mummy one because that's the one I grew up watching, and just their comedy is like Martin and Lewis. I love Martin and Lewis. Dean Martin is one of my favorite people. Jerry Lewis. I thought they were a classic comedy duo. You got the good looking, the suave singer, and then um, you got Jerry Lewis, who's just a goofball. And my dad was a huge Jerry Lewis fan.
Uh-huh.
He loved Martin and Lewis. And if you don't mind me to intercept here and kind of go on
Oh,
to
that's
a honorable mention, I guess. One of our favorite movies, and it kind of rides on the coattails of Abbott and Costello. But one of our favorite movies, and me and my brother to this day still quote it, is called Scared Stiff. And it was a movie, it was a Martin Lewis film. And it's one of our favorite movies of all time. It's one that we shared watching with my dad. And it involves Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. They get involved with this girl who is on her way to this mansion that's out in this island. So they had to get on this cruise to go because Martin, Dean Martin's character, his name's Larry, and he gets falls in love with the girl, and he's determined to go wherever she's going. Her name's Mary, and Jerry Lewis's character's name is Myron,
mm-hmm.
and he's hilarious in it. There's a scene, and this is one that me and my brother and I hope Chris don't get embarrassed by me doing this. But there's a scene where when he first meets Mary on that ship because he had uh, snuck into her room, and when he meets her, she said, "What's your name?" And he said, "It's Myron M. Mertz." She said, "Myron M. Mertz." He says, "Myron, yeah, what's the M stand for?" Is it Myron? She said, "Your name's Myron?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Whenever I was a kid, I was awful. My mother would yell, Myron, Myron." I can't do it, but you just have to watch that. But it's just simple, stupid stuff like that. Um,
And is it
and
that's the one too, Cam, where he does the Carmen Miranda dance?
there's the Carmen Miranda dance like Lucille Ball, the Malughetto or however you call it. It's called. I'm not going to say what that means. You just have to look up the lyrics to that. But he goes, "Mama, mama, you ghetto, ma, you ghetto." And anybody who speaks that language, I'm sure that I'm butchering it, um, but the thing is that it's spooky. It's a scary. They go to this haunted house, and there's like this zombie going around, and I used to think, I was like, that guy looks like Mickey Dolenz. I
Mhm.
just thought that randomly because I was a huge Monkees fan. I was like, that is the guy that plays that zombie is a looks like Mickey Dolenz. And as I got into the Monkees real big as a teenager, I found out that Mickey Dolenz' dad played in that movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, that has to be that guy.
Mhm.
And I went and looked because I think his dad's name is George Dolenz. It wasn't. That wasn't his dad at all. It was another guy that played. That was like this guy, and I'm like, why would I, as a kid, think that that looked like Mickey Dolan? And it
Mickey
might be his
Dolenz is
dad,
real bad.
but his dad was actually in the film. But it's really funny. You have to just watch it. There's all kinds of spooky stuff. They go down into like a the bottom of that castle, and they got these people that are in these glass coffins. You can see through it. But the big kicker is at the end. I don't know if you are, because I'm a huge into classic film, and I love Bob Hope. I love Bing
I knew
Crosby.
that's what I knew you was going to say that.
Bob Hope and Bing Crosby had a series of films, and I
The
hope I can.
Road to Bali.
Well, one of them is Road to Bali, and then they had other ones that was the Road Two. I always call them the Road Two series.
Right.
Well, at the end, because they always end up getting lost in these Road Two films, and at the end, they're leaving the castle. Everything's all right, and then Jerry Lewis, he's goofing around, and he goes and he this little like a brick opens up in this wall, and Dane's like, let's go, Myron, we're going to leave. He said, I'm gonna go look at it. I'm gonna see what it is. It's a treasure or something like that. And he goes and looks at it, and it shows his face, and he's like laughing, but then his face goes to like fright, and he goes, oh, and like screams, and he runs off. And then Dean Martin runs to it to see what he was going at, and he just thinks that he's being foolish. But when he sees it, he screams and throws up his arms and leaves. But what it is that it pans around, and it's Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. It's their heads on skeleton bodies, and they're still alive, and they're like bodies are like moving up and down and stuff. It's hilarious. It just ties into that. Um, but it's a fun, spooky film
Right.
of the classic sort. I love spooky films. Like one of my favorite dark comedies is called Arsenic and Old Lace with Cary
Mhm.
Grant, Priscilla Lane. Um, I won't get into it, but if you want to watch something that's funny, that's dark, watch Arsenic and Old Lace. It's hilarious.
My
It's
dad really likes that movie.
it's really funny. But Scared Stiff, I highly recommend that one. If you like classic films, don't mind watching the black and whites. That's
Mhm.
top of the tier for me.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love the black and white films. I absolutely love them.
It's got
and
some great
I'm really
songs, great comedy routines in it and stuff, and it's great.
I'm really glad Candice brought that one up because that kind of did transition from Abigail Still Meet Frankenstein into that, and both of those films are in the same vein of humor and horror at the same time, and I feel like it's really hard to make those two genres work together. So I'm glad you guys decided to kind of do this show, talk about that, because it's kind of really made me, realize that, there's a lot of comedy horrors out there. And, TJ made a comment saying, do you guys think comedy and campy are two different things? Like Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker, because of his campy, it's a pretty serious movie. And
Yeah.
he's definitely got a point there, because with comedy horror, that's blatantly, and obviously comedy horror. Um, there's stuff that's in there that's intentional, that's intentionally funny.
Mhm.
Um, but like stuff like the example, that's a great example that TJ used in Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. It's not seen as a comedy horror. And the stuff that's funny that's in the film is not intentionally supposed to be funny, but
Right.
it's just funny just how it came out in the final product of the film. And that's where there's a difference between comedy and horror and just campy films.
Mm.
because and that's the best way I can describe that is if when it's campy, that it's got funny stuff in it, but it's not intentionally supposed to be funny.
Right.
But in these, um, like the examples we've been given, like the Epic Sell Me Frankenstein, Scared Stiff, or um, the Burbs, all
Mm.
that stuff in there is definitely intended to have that comedy included in the film. Um, but like it is very difficult to make that work because, like I said, there's a lot of comedy horror films out there, but not all of them work for what they're doing. Like, and this is just my opinion, and I know a lot of people are not going to agree with this, but like the Terrifier films, like there's stuff that's thrown in there that's supposed to be comedic, and it's intentionally supposed to be comedic. Um, but I think a lot of the stuff that they do, that the gore factor of those Terrifier films, kind of overshadow that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
but
so too.
and to that's ultimately is what I'm not. What makes me not interested in the Terrifier films because I love gore in horror films, but I think it, it's only interesting to me if they don't go over the top like the Terrifier films did, because there's a little bit, and from what I'm hearing about Terrifier 3, some of the stuff in it's going to be like the most over the top that they have done thus far with the Terrifier film. So
Mhm.
while I'm not the biggest fan of those films, I'll still watch Terrifier 3 because
I would too.
I love giving stuff a chance at least. There's some stuff out there I won't give a chance to at all. I just have zero interest in stuff like a Serbian film, and I watched the Human Centipede, but I'll never watch the Human Centipede
Yeah,
again.
that was a
Um,
one and done for me.
I'm not interested in I've seen the Hostel films, but that's another series of films I have no interest in ever watching again. That kind of horror, like over the top, just the stuff that's get people talk because you have to put that in there. It just doesn't interest me. I'm more interested in horror that does get people talking, but it has a more deeper matter to it, and it's things about it that will actually progress the story to make it interesting. You don't have to put these over the top kills and a mass amount of like gore shock value in a film to
I th-
impress me.
I think that that's the difference between um, a horror movie that's not fun and a horror movie that is fun, because
Exactly.
I think that that's why me and Chris in particular like the slasher films so much, because they're fun. The
Yeah.
Terrifier films, on the other hand, are very mean spirited. There's nothing fun about the Terrifier films.
There's some hard stuff to stomach in there too, especially for and I've seen a lot, but like Terrifier goes crazy with like the shock value and everything, and um, it's I don't know, it's just not for me.
And I wanted to mention Coco's in here. I think I was talking to Candace and I said, I haven't seen Coco in a while and I hope she's doing well. But Coco says, hey, dudes, hope you guys are having a fine Friday despite your hoarseness, Candace. she, she says, question, would you guys pay 750 to stay at Camp Crystal Lake? Your answers might be funny. I wouldn't pay somebody to stay there, but if they want to pay me $750 to stay at Camp Crystal Lake, I'll do that.
Why is that? I know they're like doing some kind of like they've been doing these like tours and stuff from where they filmed the original Friday 13th, and I know that people can like stay over and they do like these photo ops with like Adrian King and Ari Lehman where like
That
you're in the
would be
water on a canoe. But if that's what Coco's referring to, I don't know. I love Friday the 13th. That's my favorite horror franchise, but uh, I don't know. It had to be a lot included for me to pay
Yeah,
$750.
not just camping out,
For
get
$750, do you get the what do you call it? Like interactive, like
oh, yeah.
what do you call it? Like simulation, like
Mhm.
Jason, you're coming at like they got somebody playing Jason, and you got to run from them, and
I don't know, like, but
that
that
might be
if
worth
I
it.
don't, but I don't. It'd be, but to be honest, just in general, it's hard for me to pay $750 for anything.
Yeah,
Right, yeah. Steve would say, "You're crazy if you're gonna pay $750 to go camping." He'll say, "We can camp out in our backyard, and it's not gonna cost $750." And
get Harry
Dave,
Joe down the road to dress up as Jason, and
right, exactly. Davey's in here tonight. I hadn't seen Davey in a while, so welcome back, Davey. Uh, but let's see. I'm losing track of who's talked about what. I want to give everybody
Well, I think it's your turn now, Dana, because
my
Candace was talking about scared stiff, and we just kind of so
okay.
we got it from there.
I think I
I
talked
just
about two
don't
or
want to
three.
take over or anything. Um, so I didn't have Splatter University on my list, but if somebody wants to talk about that one a little bit more, we can. But one I wanted to bring up was Return to Horror High because
Mm,
Return to Horror High is a weird one. Because when I first watched Return to Horror High, I was under the impression that this film was going to be more of a straight ahead slasher. Because
But yeah,
if you read the back of the DVD case or the back of the VHS back in the day, it kind of led you to believe that that was going to be the case. But if you noticed what kind of people, what actors and actresses were in here, Maureen McCormick,
yeah.
Marsha Brady,
Yeah.
Marsha, she is a cop
Yeah.
in this. Um, George Clooney is in
Mhm.
this movie, and I know George Clooney went on later to do things like From Dusk Till Dawn and stuff like that with vampire strippers and
wasn't George Clooney also around that same time as Return to Horror High? Wasn't he also in Return of the Killer Tomatoes?
I think he may have been Chris. I really think he
I
may
think so.
have. But boy, was I surprised when I started watching it. And somebody else that's in this is Lori Lethin, who was in Bloody Birthday. She played
Mhm.
Joyce in Bloody Birthday. So Lori Lethin kind of has a career in horror and horror comedies, I guess. Um, but so you're never really sure what in the world is going on with this film because first of all, you think that it's talking about a killer at a high school. Then you find out there are a bunch of actors and actresses and a director and everything, and they're making a film about a murder that was supposed to happen at the school, or several murders that were supposed to happen. And then it seems like the actors and actresses and the filmmakers are getting killed off by somebody, and it just goes on and on and on. And then it looks like everybody's pretty much dead. There's bodies laying all over the high school, and they're covered up with sheets and stuff. And I hope there's not anybody in here right now that hasn't seen Return to Horror High, because
You're giving your warning.
I'm giving you a warning because I'm gonna spoil it
Yeah,
for you.
Candace. Before you go further into that, Dana, Candace loves Return to Horror High. I believe actually one of the first ever gifts
Yeah.
that I got Candace when we were dating was a poster of Return to Horror High.
Mm.
Um, and that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Like what you're talking about is like I don't really dignify it as like a slasher, but it's definitely comedy horror. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of, and what you're talking about, like how like all the bodies like laying around, so it almost kind of has like a it's like a comedic version of April Fool's Day in a way.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And an extra comedic version, like a bonus version. Um, but so you have all these bodies. You think everybody's dead, and Marsha Brady, Maureen McCormick comes up there in her policewoman uniform, and I just laugh every time I see her in that movie because she gets more and more covered with blood as the movie goes on, and her hair starts sticking out from her head, and so and she's still like she's trying to give off this vibe that I'm sexy because at one point her policewoman's uniform is like it's open way more than it should be, and she's got blood all over. It's like what is going on here?
Yeah, and I think there's a scene in Scary Movie 3, and I always felt that this scene in Scary Movie 3 got inspiration from that stuff with Marie McCormick in Return to Horror High, because in Scary Movie 3, one of the films they're making fun of in Scary Movie 3 is Signs, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. And so there's a scene where, like in the original Signs, when Mel Gibson is talking to the police officer and they're letting know that the Jeep or whatever the vehicle was, it slammed into his wife and pinned her up against a tree. So they're like mocking that scene in Scary Movie 3. And the police officer, every time it cuts back to her hat keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I always felt like they drew inspiration with that, how that stuff kept getting like changing with that character, and it kept getting worse and worse from the stuff with Return to Horror High.
And they could very well have done that. So the spoiler here is, gang. If you haven't left by now, I'm sorry. I'm going to spoil it for you. So they, so Marie McCormick and some of the other cops, they kind of go inside. I think they go inside the school, and then
Yeah.
while they're inside there, the the body's set up. These people aren't dead. It was just some big elaborate farce, basically.
Yeah.
And they just get up, grab the bloody sheets and everything, pile them up in the vehicles, and they leave. And then when Maureen McCormick and the other cops come back out, they're like, "What happened? Where'd the bodies go?" And I loved that aspect of it, that they wanted to be so audacious about this. They wanted it to be in your face. We pulled one over on the
Yeah.
audience, and we pulled one over on the people in this film.
Yeah.
You thought this was one way, but no, this is what really was going on. So it's almost like you had three different storylines going
Mhm.
on in this film. And I absolutely loved it. Some people might get angry that they were done that way, feel like they've been jerked around a little bit, but I loved it. And that's why I continue to love Return to Horror High
Yeah.
to
I
this
like that
day.
one.
Watch.
It's kind of like Scary Movie before Scary Movie.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
know it's not making fun of movies or anything like that, but it's kind of that concept of really goofy, slapstick.
Well, at the
and-
same time, it is kind of making fun of movies too. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is. It's making fun of the horror genres and stuff. And
because you have
slashers.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because I think it was a film that Dana talked about last time when we were doing the horror comedy thing, when it was just me and her on was it Apples and Oranges. Um, she was Student Bodies is another. So I feel like Student Bodies and like Return to Horror High and stuff like that was definitely the predecessors to the scary movie films that would eventually come out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, Return to Horror High was one that I rented as a kid for a slumber party, and we just loved it so much that I kept on renting it. It was one of those kind of rentals because my dad. I mean, we went to the movie rental place every week. We had a special where you could get like 6 movies
Yeah.
for 5 nights or something like that, and bring them back. And we were always renting movies. So I got one. My brother would get one. My dad would get like 3 or whatever was left. And I would that was one that if I couldn't find anything else, that's one that I would always pick up because I always thought it was great. It's just
Yeah.
stupid, It was a stupid, and I say that in a good way, in a good meaning.
It's definitely not one of those that you got to think about like
Yeah,
really hard or anything.
it's fun to watch with a group of friends.
Hmm. Definitely. Um, so I guess we'll go back around to I guess is it Chris? Is it your turn now again? Or
Yeah.
I'm getting confused now.
Well,
I don't think it matters.
I will talk about one, and it's not like a typical film. It's a mockumentary film, but I always include it in comedy horror films personally, just because of the cast itself. Because this is a mockumentary film that includes not only David Naughton from American Werewolf in London, Gunnar Hansen from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all 3 of the Evil Dead ladies, Ken Foray, amongst others. And it's a documentary or a mockumentary called Brutal Massacre.
Yeah.
So basically, David Naughton, who is the centerpiece of this mockumentary, he is this kind of like a washed up filmmaker. He made all of these films like back in the 80s and stuff. And they never really took off. And there was even a joke in the film to where he goes to like a dollar store or whatever, and so like all his movies are the only DVDs like in the dollar bin. And So he's trying to make a comeback. He's trying to make like a great film finally that every horror fan is going to love. And so he's just got this film crew following him around, and Brian O'Halloran, who played Dante in Clerks and several other Kevin Smith films, he's kind of like the guy that scopes out all the places to where they're going to be doing the filming. And my favorite person in the whole film is Gunnar Hansen's character, because they find this really creepy looking house that they want to use for the film, and they can't quite figure out who is the owner of this house. So they approach this guy who's in town, which is played by Gunnar Hansen, and he's a really crazy looking guy. And they're just saying, "Hey, do you know like who owns this house?" And he's like, "Yeah, I own it." And then he's like, "Well, can we use it to film this movie?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. I don't fucking care. I'm just going to burn the whole thing down and rebuild it anyway." And that's just a line that he constantly uses throughout the film. And then like there's other scenes with him, like where he's in a diner, and I think it's Teresa Tilly or Sarah York, whichever one you want to call her, that played in the original Evil Dead. She plays a waitress in that, and he like asks for her number or something, but she doesn't say anything to him. She just rolls her eyes and walks off. And he's like, "Well, fuck you, bitch," or something. But so there's just like I said, it's a whole like mockumentary of just like a film crew following this this crew around to try to make this new horror film, which doesn't. And the one thing happens after the other, causing them problems in production of the film. And if you've never seen it and you like any of those people that I mentioned from their respective horror films that are involved in it, check it out if you can. I don't know if it's on any streaming services, but I mean, I know you can pick the DVD or Blu-ray up pretty cheap of it.
I think I've got the DVD of that because when you were talking about it, I think I own that, but it's been a while since I watched it.
Yeah,
I
I
remember
know. I
watching that when
definitely have the DVD up here.
I remember watching that when you first got that.
Let me go ahead and grab that. So this right here is the DVD.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the one I have. Yep.
and then on the back, it kind of has a picture there of several. You can see David Naughton is there in the center, and then right beside him is Ellen Samwise, who played Cheryl on Evil Dead. Back behind him, is Kim Foray. Over on the end is Gunnar Hansen. Um, and like I said, there's tons and tons of people
Because didn't
in
you get
this.
to talk to Gunnar Hansen a little bit about that?
I did. I actually
I
have
remember
a
that.
Brutal Master poster too. That's actually that image. It's on the back of the DVD case, and it's a much blown up, bigger photo of it on the poster. But I've got everybody that was pretty much in it to sign it. When I met Gunnar Hansen years ago when he was still living, uh, I had him sign it. I've pretty much everybody I could get on there. So there's a couple people I still haven't got to sign it, but yeah, when I met Gunnar Hansen, we talked about that, and he was really like intrigued to talk to me about it because usually a lot of people would come up to him and talk to him about either Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. And he said that he had such an amazing time, such a fun time, one of the funnest times he's ever had making a film on Brutal Massacre. Just because of that character he plays. He plays this crazy old guy that like lives in town there. And another thing I think that I brought up to him because shortly after they did this, he did this movie, which is like based in Alaska or somewhere. It's called like the Rejuvenix something massacre. So, and I just noticed like a lot of films that he was in either had chainsaw in the title or
Yeah.
massacre in the title. And I asked him about that, and I remember asking him, and I said, "Is that just?" Do you typically look for those types of roles that has those words in the title? He goes, no, it's not really. He said, just people just reach out to me and ask me if I'm interested in being a part of it. And so yeah, he's a Gunnar Hansen was a great dude. I really enjoyed talking to him back, all those years ago.
Oh, hey Blair. Blair wants to know, have you seen Mosquito? I think I've seen Mosquito, but it's been a long, long time.
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever seen it. What is it about?
I wanted to say it was about like a giant mosquito or a bunch of giant mosquitoes, but I could be
I
wrong.
remember watching a movie with a mosquito in it one time, and it was like huge, and it would like go and like jab it into people and like suck their blood out. And
Well, are you talking about? Is that from Popcorn? Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
Popcorn has a
was
mosquito
that
movie,
it?
but
Let me see.
I think there was another movie though that may have had Gunnar Hansen in it called Mosquito.
Oh, okay. Well, I
Yeah,
know that like what Candice might be referring to is like because in
the one
Popcorn
in Popcorn.
they have the different little movies that they
Yeah,
show
I've
within the
seen that.
theater,
I've seen
and
it. That's
then
it.
they have that actual like big mosquito prop that comes down on a zip line, which ends up killing the one guy. He's like the professor or whatever that's helping them run the movie marathon because it comes through and like just punctures him in the stomach.
Yeah,
I believe
I've
with
seen
the
I've
chest.
seen this before. My brother was watching it. It's a big giant mosquito, and it goes like sucks all this blood out. It's really good.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I've heard of that one.
Look it
So
up, and you'll see it, and you might recognize it.
I seen Blair said that Gunnar Hansen is in it though. So yeah,
Yeah, he's in it. Yeah, I think he's
I've
one of the main
definitely
guys
not
in it.
seen it then because if I had seen it and I knew that Gunnar Hansen was in it, I would definitely remembered it. Because I'm a big Gunnar Hansen fan, and I feel that not to get too off track, but I talk to a lot of people at conventions and stuff that are kind of just started maybe a few years ago, started coming to conventions, And there's been times where we've talked about like people we've met and stuff, and sometimes I'll bring up Gunnar Hansen, and they're always like, "Oh my God, I wish I could have got to meet him." And really, you don't know how I feel about that, but like I really wish those people could have got to meet Gunnar Hansen too, because he was such an awesome guy. He really, really loved his fans and respected his fans, and always gave them, plenty of time. There was never any kind of rush with him when you met him at a convention. Um, so yeah, it's sad that a lot of newer people that are new to these shows got to miss out on people like him and Sid Haig and guys like that.
And I feel bad that I saw Gunnar Hansen at a few conventions, and it was one of those cases where you always think you have more time, that I'll see him at the next convention, and unfortunately I didn't get that chance. But TJ says, rest in peace, Maggie Smith. I did not know that Maggie Smith passed away.
Yeah, she passed away today. See, that was one of the first things
Sorry,
I
I was
seen
muted.
Oh, sorry,
From Harry
Candice.
Potter?
Hmm.
Oh my goodness, when she passed away?
today. Yeah,
I
that was
didn't
the
see
first.
that. I
I
hate
thought
that.
you knew. I would have mentioned it to you, Ken.
Mm-mm, no.
Sorry.
I was
But
sitting
yeah,
here
that
texting
was
my mom. She had sent me a message. I was like, "What?" I heard what you
that.
said.
That was one of the first things I saw this morning when I woke up on Facebook, and like I think she's primarily known for like her role as McGonagall in the Harry Potter films, but my introduction to Maggie Smith was the film Hook with Robin Williams,
Oh,
where
yeah.
he plays the older version of Wendy. Uh, so, and I've
Oh,
seen a lot of
Maggie
people
Smith.
posting like memes and stuff that they created
Well,
online, like saying, like Wendy and Peter are together again and all this stuff. And
I'm embarrassed to say that I did not know who Maggie Smith was. I had to look it up when I
Yeah,
seen TJ.
yeah. One of my favorite things that she was in. I love Harry Potter definitely, but I love the Sister Act films and
yeah,
um, great actress. I really because whenever you said that, I was like, "What? I didn't know she passed away. That's crazy."
yeah,
Oh,
she was 89 years old. She would have been 90, I think, in November.
Blair said that he met Gunner at Scarefest in '09 and accidentally spilled his Diet Coke in his lap. Ha ha. I was so embarrassed. I can't say I've ever done that to a celebrity that's been at a
oh
convention.
my goodness.
Bless your heart, Blair. I
Was she 85? Teacher, I thought I read it said she was 89, and she was.
thought it's a
Oh, okay, okay. He said a typo, 89. Okay.
typo. Okay.
Uh, but yeah, Blair, I did meet Gunner at that same Scarefest. Actually, I had met him a couple times before that too, because the first ever convention I went to was Cinema Wasteland in 2000, April of 2009, is when they had a 35th anniversary Texas Chainsaw Massacre reunion. So it shows my age, because this year is now the 50th anniversary of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Um, but yeah, I met him at that one. He was pretty much one of the first ever celebrities I ever met. Him and Marilyn Burns said they had that reunion at that show. She was still alive at the time as well. Um, and funny, I mean, it's not really a funny story, but it's more of an odd story. Speaking of people that have passed away, that's involved with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, where that was my first ever convention I went to. Um, Lou Perryman was also advertised for that show, and I was, of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, Part Two is my favorite. And so I was super excited about meeting everybody there, but especially, excited about meeting LG from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And so I get there, and I hadn't really been on the internet or anything much that day or the day before. Um, but I get there, I'm like looking around, checking everything out, and didn't see Lou Perryman anywhere. Didn't see his table. I was like, well, I didn't see anything that he canceled or anything. So I remember going up and meeting John Dugan at that show and talked to him for a little bit. And I said, "Hey, before I go, is Lou Perryman here anywhere?" And John Dugan's like face it changed, like he's like it kind of like he turned almost white. And he said, "You're joking, right?" I said, "No, about what?" And he said, "Lou Perryman was murdered yesterday." So Lou Perryman was murdered the day before I went to my first convention, unfortunately. So I never got to meet him. I have talked to people that have got to meet him that started doing conventions much earlier than me. Just said he was an amazing guy. You know, I know like after his death, his daughter was present a lot on his Facebook account and would put stuff out there, and talk to some of the fans and stuff. And she showed appreciation for people that loved her dad and all that. But yeah, it was so bizarre for me as a fan being new to that whole convention scene and just hear something like that happening. I really didn't know how to process it at the time. And it's still crazy to this day, 15 years later, for me.
Yeah, that was one of those shocker of all shocker types of deals because um, Lou Perryman was somebody that I really really enjoyed watching on film. He even had a small part in the first Poltergeist movie. Does anybody remember where Lou Perryman was in that movie?
Wasn't he the groundskeeper for the cemetery, or am I
He
mistaken?
he was one of the guys that was working on their pool, the
Oh, okay, that's
Freeland
right. Yeah.
pool, and and the oldest Freeling daughter, Dana, flips all those guys off because they're kind of whistling at her, and so woo, and she turns
Oh,
around
okay, yeah, that's
off
right.
basically. But yeah, I remember Lou Perryman like reaching in to Mrs. Freeling's kitchen through the window and just grabbing a cup of coffee and starts drinking and grabbing stuff to eat. And she comes in there and she's like, "Well, help yourself, why don't you?" But
I hate to cut this short, but I'm gonna have to get off here in a minute.
mhm.
You all can stay on as long as you all want to. My mom had actually wrote me, and I have to go do something
Okay.
along those lines. But I'll get off whenever she comes. I won't get off right now, but I'll just let y'all know whenever it's time for me to leave.
Well, I mean, to be totally honest, Candace, I don't want to cut it short either. I would love to go on and on and on, but um,
We could do another one of these, same kind
yeah,
of subject another time too.
yeah. Um, I guess what we could do is we could just, tie things up for now because I've got to go to the restroom anyway, and I've got a grocery order that's supposed to be coming. A Petco order just got delivered. My pets will be happy about that.
Oh
So,
yeah.
TJ says to get you some tea for that throat, Candace.
Oh, I drink plenty of tea.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I've been drinking plenty of tea. Whatever this is that's hit me, this strep throat is
it's
really bad this time. So,
I'm hoping I was
trust
sick
me,
there
I'm
for a
getting
little
tea.
bit. Yeah, I was sick
Honey,
there. Sorry, Ken. I didn't mean to talk over
okay.
you. But I've been sick here for a little bit too, and I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not as bad as Candace, clearly, because like she's pretty bad off right now.
yeah, poor
Worked out,
Candace. It's gotten her. Got a hold of
Yeah,
her a little bit.
it really did.
but
But when I get sick, unfortunately.
yeah, and yeah, me too. Like whenever, that's why I'm trying to fight it as much as I can. Is like because I do not want to get like deep into the sickness because once I do, I
No,
get really, really bad.
no.
Uh, and especially I don't want to be sick. My tomorrow's my birthday, by the way.
Oh well,
Uh,
happy birthday early, Chris. In case I forget tomorrow.
I don't want to be sick on my birthday. That
Oh,
would be good.
Mm-mm. No.
No. Have y'all got big plans or anything for your
No,
birthday?
I don't. No, I don't really do stuff like that anymore. I mean, me and Candace's birthday was last Friday,
Mhm.
um, and we went out with the boys and we went and watched Beetlejuice again, and
Went and
I
ate.
ate dairy cheer and got ice cream, and and I think that same evening, me and Candace went out to the Black Gold Festival here at
Yeah.
Hazard. And so we had a really good time on her. For me, I'm not hard to please when it comes to my birthday. Just like yeah, I it just nowadays on my birthday, I just live it like any other day, pretty much.
Yeah, the older we get, the more it gets like that. Mom always told me that would happen.
But it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
It shouldn't. Unfortunately, I find myself falling prey to that line of thinking every succeeding year. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm just getting older. I'm just getting older now. When I was
Yeah.
a kid, I loved my birthdays because you got a lot of presents and you got a party or you got to go to McDonald's and have a big party or whatever, or Chuck E. Cheese or
Yeah.
showbiz pizza or whatever it may be.
I would rather give people stuff on their birthday than get it on my own. That's my
Yeah,
joy is doing stuff for other people. I've always
that's
been that
the
way.
way I am on Christmas too. Now I love
Mhm.
watching my nephews open
Yeah,
gifts and
yeah.
stuff
I
like
don't care if I get anything. I want to watch people, open up the stuff that I've got them or whatever other people's got them.
And Candace did get me, like she gave it to me earlier. And I posted it on my Facebook. You might have
Mhm.
seen it, but she bought me this shirt, and I absolutely love this shirt that she got me. She said, I got this for your birthday, but I want to give it to you early." And it's got all the VHS like horror films on it. Did you see it, Dana? I posted a picture of it on my Facebook.
yeah, yeah, I did see it, and I
You
It's
know,
think Candace
it's
the
sent it to me.
you should be getting your other gifts tomorrow. So,
oh,
but I
I got
have to
other
leave,
gifts
guys. I'm sorry. My mom's
Oh,
out there
that's
waiting on
okay.
me.
We're gonna tie up everything here in just a second,
Okay,
Candace. But
but
thank you for being on with
well,
us.
thank you. I'm sorry about my voice and stuff. It
Oh,
probably
no
won't be
problem.
back for a while. I hope I'm better before we go to I hope it don't linger along that
Well,
long.
we got a month, so I think we'll be all
Well, you know
right.
me, though, and I've had this. One time I was sick and I had a voice like this for it was like 4 or 5 weeks. Remember that, Chris? That was crazy.
Well, that is true too. So,
Well, just keep your fingers
let's just hope. Let's hope and pray that you'll be
I'll
all
be
right.
finding cause honey always seems to, like, soothe my throat and makes my voice get a little bit better. I'll be
Just
trying
get
to
you a big shot
find
of Fireball. You'll be all right.
oh my gosh.
Oh,
No. But anyways, guys, I'll see you guys. I've had a good time doing this tonight, but,
I've had a good
um,
time too.
I
It's
have
fun.
but I hope everybody in the chat and everybody has a wonderful rest of your day, and, I will see you next time. See you
All
guys.
right. See you, Candace.
Okay.
Okay, so me and Chris are going to do our best to tie this up here. Chris, is there anything that you want to bring up before we do get off of here for the night?
Um, I don't know. I can't really. I had a great time doing this. I mean, it was very, much like what we did on apples and oranges.
Yeah,
And I was really glad that that Candace could be involved with this too, to where because I know that she did want to talk about the Burbs and stuff
yeah.
because that being one of her favorite horror comedies and actually one of her favorite films ever. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing this, and I know there's a lot more out there that
Oh,
we could talk
there's
about.
more
There's
that,
so
yeah.
much to cover.
And I think, for next time, I think I am going to put Splatter University on there because I can tell the story about Steve and the time that we did that watch along and he was carrying on about that guy that went oh all the time in the
Yeah, and there's so many others that I would love to talk about too, like personal favorites in in the comedy horror genre, like House or House Two or
yeah.
The Frighteners. Um, and I don't know if we talk about it on the last show, but Dead Alive.
I want to say no, that we didn't talk about Dead
But
Alive.
I think that's one we should definitely talk about at some point, though.
And I had Bad Taste on here. I didn't get around to
Okay,
Bad
too,
Taste.
yeah.
Yeah.
All of Peter Jackson's, horror stuff was like Your Bad Taste, Dead Alive, The Frighteners.
Uh,
Well, I don't know if you really count Meet the Feebles as like horror, but it's got horror elements to it.
yeah, it does definitely have horror elements to it. But there's Blood Diner. I had Blood Diner on my list.
Oh,
Two,
yeah.
2001 Maniacs with Robert Englund. Uh, Frankenhooker.
Yeah. Well,
Tucker and Dale.
any of Frank Lauder stuff would work
Oh,
there.
yeah, because it's just so out there. Frankie and
There's a lot of trauma stuff. Like I think I mentioned that before, but there's so much trauma stuff that would fit in that category as well.
hmm And so I guess um, I don't have anything else to bring up other than again I'm planning on doing this watch along for Phenomena on Sunday at 7 Eastern time. That's not 7 in the morning, folks. I ain't gonna be up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday doing a watch along. So it'll be 7 in the evening.
I can
Um,
assure you I wouldn't be up doing a watch along at 7 a.m. either.
the only time I get up that early is when I gotta work. So um, on the weekends, no, not usually. But we did almost go on for 2 hours tonight, so
Yeah.
that was that was pretty good. That was and I had a fun time, and I think Candice had a good time. Chris had a good time. Sounds like you guys and gals in the chat had a good time, and we had a pretty good crowd for the most part. I was looking at the numbers there,
Yeah,
but
I'm glad to see everybody that popped up in chat. TJ and Blair, Coco, and Blissful, and just X-Ray. Everybody that showed up, uh, and I had some of them I hadn't seen in a while. I used to be like I'd almost see TJ at almost every stream we did together or something, and I guess he just had his own thing going. That happens. I understand that because there's sometimes where I have to take breaks and stuff from YouTube and stuff. Me and Candice were doing our own channel and stuff, and we're hopefully going to get back to that at some point. But we're going to just take a break for right now, just because we just got some other stuff that's going on that's more important right now.
mhm. And I think that happens to all of us at some points in times. At certain points, more than we feel like we can handle. But as they say, God never gives you any more than you can handle, and He's always hanging around there somewhere in the background, even if we feel like He's not sometimes. So, but I won't get too religious and philosophical on here for you tonight. But I guess me and Chris will tie this up with a nice, neat little bow. TJ, you say I've been busy, guys. LOL, going to a con this weekend. October's going to be a busy one.
Oh,
Like
yeah, it is.
October is for us horror fans, especially. It's a it's a busy month. Or for Halloween fans of the holiday Halloween, as well as the movie Halloween, it's a busy time. Um, but I guess me and Chris are off like a couple of dirty shirts. My shirt's not dirty, and I know Chris's shirt ain't dirty, but we're off like two shirts that are dirty. And I want to remind everybody, as I always do before I get off here for the night, to be kind to one another and blaze that trail. And be sure to watch out for all the new October programming. It's Fulci Fall, folks. We're going to have a whole heck of a lot of Fulci coming up. Some Universal Monsters mixed in there on a Friday Foolish. There's going to be some Fulci watch alongs and all that good stuff. I hope I can get Chris and maybe Candice to come on here with me for a few of those, and
Oh, yeah.
maybe for some of the Fulci programming in general. But we're out of here for the night. But thanks to everybody that came in. Even the people that weren't chatting, if you were watching them as we discussed some of these movies, I'm glad that you were here. There's no requirement that says you have to hop in the chat and talk. You can just listen to us or watch us or whatever the case may be. But anyway, we're out of here for the night, but we will see everybody next time. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.